Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I am joined by longtime educator and author Susie Gooch. Susie is a lover of books, history, and art, and she was a longtime educator, spending her time educating her students about her passion for reading and writing. She is the author of the Carrington series, so we're going to be talking to her about her books and everything that she's up to and going to be up to. So, Susie, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Curtis, for having me. I always welcome the opportunity to talk about books and my students and reading is in the world of reading.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
I would love to do that. I am from Searcy, Arkansas. I am married to my high school sweetheart. I met on a blind date when I was 16. We've been married almost 40 years. We have three grown children and four granddaughters. And we are very lucky in that all of our children, my parents, his mother recently passed, but she was here. They all moved to our little town in Arkansas and they all live right here because we have a wonderful quality of life here in Searcy, Arkansas. And it's such a great place to live and grow up that I actually set all three of my books here in Searcy. Now, I'm not a native Arkansan, and I moved here the first time in 1998 from London, England, but I just fell in love with the city and I love my little community. And I just wanted to be able to set my stories here because I've set my life here. I got into teaching in 2002. I did not go to school to become an educator. My undergraduate degree was in English and had every intention of going to law school, but that did not work out. Instead, I went to labor and delivery and I had a baby. And so I became a full-time mom. And when we moved here in 1998, my son at that point was 7 years old. And it was very clear that he was having severe learning problems. Um, and no one seemed to know how to teach him. And so I didn't want to just homeschool him and without him being taught by a certified teacher. So I certified. So if I ever had to homeschool him, I could. And in doing so, I found my calling in life. I absolutely love to be in the classroom. I love sharing my passion for reading and writing with students and ended up getting master's degrees in reading, administration, and gifted and talented. And spent about 8 years as well as administration in our district level. But my heart has always been in the classroom. And I just think that reading and education are such a gift that we give to our students in this country. And it's just, we're so blessed. The best thing you can give a student is the opportunity to learn and the belief that they can learn. And that's something I'm very passionate about.
Well, it's amazing how you moved from England and lost the accent and you picked up the Southern accent.
Oh, no, no. I've always been a Southern girl. I'm originally from Tennessee, but
Oh,
my
I thought you
husband,
said something about
I
England.
did. We moved here from London, England, because
Oh,
for about 12 years there, we moved every 2 years for my husband's job. He was building a career, and I was taking care of the children. And one of our postings was in Europe, and we moved to London, and we lived there. And so we lived in Dallas, we lived in Memphis. So we moved quite a bit. But I am a Southern girl at heart, and I noticed you picked up on my accent. I don't think I have an accent, but people tell me that I do.
the reason I picked up from it, I'm originally from Louisiana.
Oh, okay, awesome. We lived in Louisiana for a while, a little town called Bastrop. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
That's northeast. Yep,
North, up there by Alexandria, yeah.
yep.
Monroe.
Yeah, I was in from the southwest part, DeRidder, Louisiana, down by Lake Charles.
Mm,
Yeah,
beautiful country, fabulous food.
absolutely. So let's talk about how you got into being a writer and becoming an author.
Okay. So I told you that my undergrad degree was in writing, and probably should back up even just a little bit in the story. I'm dyslexic, and so I struggled to learn to read. I loved math, I loved history, but reading was just really hard for me because I was dyslexic. And I was very lucky because my mother is a 40-year educator. She's retired, but she was a reading specialist. And she did basically for me what I had planned to do for my child if I needed to. She taught me to read. And she wouldn't let me stop until I was a very good, strong reader. She taught me to make movies in my head, to see, to make connections, to ask questions. All of these things that we've learned through research are reading strategies. She was really on the cutting edge of that in the early 80s and in the late 70s and helped me to really learn to be a really fantastic reader. I can read about a 350-page book in about 2.5 hours, um, and really understand it and comprehend it really high. And that was really from practice and learning. So we know the brain can be retrained with dyslexia. We know that those things can happen. And but having said all that, I never saw myself as a teacher. I just didn't. I saw myself being a writer. And even from a pretty early age, I just loved books so much. My first few books, I don't think I've ever told anybody this in an interview. My first three books, I just wrote for myself. They're still in a box. Um, these were stories that were just in my head, and I wrote down for myself. So this is The Carrington Affairs, which was published in March of 24, was the first one to ever get across the line. And to get to a point where like, okay, I'm ready to share with the world. Because when you're a writer or any kind of artisan, really. It's like walking naked down Main Street. You're bearing your soul to the world when you share your art with people. And it's a scary thing. It's a very scary thing because no one puts bad art out there on purpose. And if someone finds fault with it, so I was very hesitant to share it. But I had a friend and she had read some of my stuff and she said, "See, you got to do something with this." And I had some other friends that just kept saying, "Your writing's good, you need to do it." And I think that was support really helped me to do that. But writing has always been important to me and teaching kids to write. I mean, I spent 15 years teaching students to write essays and stories, because I think that everybody has a story. And when you can put your words out there, it's a way of being seen. And isn't that what we all want in the world, to be seen, to be heard?
Absolutely. Well, talk about your love for gravitating towards strong women characters.
Oh, I do love strong women. I am from a long line of strong Southern women. And one of the things about um, a strong woman is a strong woman knows how to bend without breaking. And I think that was something my grandmother taught me, my mother has taught me over the years. Um, and my characters are that way. Both of them are very strong. Um, that doesn't mean they're without fault. But a strong woman can learn from her mistakes and she can do better. And, like Maya Angelou's idea, do the best you can until you know better and then do better. That's a strong woman because a weak woman will never admit she was wrong. And so once we accept we're flawed people, but we can be better, then the strength really becomes in your characters. And that's what I strive to show in all my characters is that while they're flawed, their desire to be better people is where their strength comes from.
Team Taylor or Team Poppy?
Oh, that's a great question. I wanted everybody to to see that perception is reality and reality is not necessarily your perception. I mean, it's not really always the way you think it is. We think our perception is reality. But when you read the book the first time, like the first part where you read Taylor's story, you're all on Team Taylor. How awful Poppy was to do this, and how could she have an affair with someone's husband and do all these things? Well, then when you read Poppy's story, you go, wait a minute, maybe I didn't have all the facts there. Wait a minute, maybe I looked at this the wrong way. And I hear that so much from my readers to say, I was all on Team Taylor, and now I'm kind of don't know. I think they were both right. And that was the goal of this book, was that all around us, people are in major conflicts. inside our country, with other countries, within families. People are in conflict, but it's not until you slow down, you listen to the other side, you open yourself up to their perspective, and then you can communicate and then you can build a basis to understand each other and build a relationship. And that is when life can change. That is when the world becomes a better place. And so for me, I want my readers to walk away going, they were both right, they were both wrong, but they both made an effort to acknowledge and respect the other person. Because I think that's so important. I think it's a huge part of what's probably missing in society right now is our willingness to accept others and to listen to their side and acknowledge they have some truth.
Let's take a quick break.
In Kansas, blind vending operators are vanishing without a trace. No bodies, no witnesses, only silence. Detective Michael Miguel thought he had seen everything, but this case pulls him into something far darker, a web of institutional corruption so deep it was never meant to be uncovered. When vulnerable blind people disappear and bureaucracies close ranks, one question remains: who will fight for justice? As Miguel digs deeper, he uncovers a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of power, a system that exploits the very people it was designed to protect. The truth is buried in paperwork, hidden behind closed doors, guarded by those who have everything to lose. Some conspiracies hide in plain sight. This one hides in the dark. Iron Cane Media presents The Blind Conspiracy, written by Mikhail Battles Sr., available now on Amazon.
We'll talk to the listeners about the Carrington series. Tell us what we can expect when we read it and why you decided to write it and where we can get it.
Okay, those are all good things to tell you. I'd love to tell you about that. So the Carrington story, it's just they're just people that sort of popped up into my head, and this is how my characters do. They show up in my head and they start talking to me, and they tell me their whole story. And I never write anything until I know the whole story. So the Carrington, it starts out. I knew Bennett Carrington, and I knew that Bennett Carrington is being vetted for the vice presidency. He's this junior senator from Arkansas. And that is very true because, like, even right now on my street, you can go four houses over, and I live next door to one of the former governors. Our small town, we have a lot of politicians and we have a really great way of life. My house actually backs to the country club. So a lot of the book happens in the country club because we have a really great way of life here in Searcy. And, he's being vetted for the vice presidency. He's married to the perfect society wife who looks the right way and dresses the right way and says all the right things from the right family. But he doesn't really, he loves her, but he's never been in love with her. And then he finds out that the woman he was in love with, really in love with, he has a love child he didn't know anything about. And that sort of blows this whole thing up. And he resigns in disgrace. And then 12 years later, in order to run for governor and have a chance to rebuild his career, he has to get Poppy and Taylor to both tell their stories. And one thing that I include in my book, it's a lot of it, we call it the book about dirty little secrets, because if you live in a small town, one of the currencies in small towns is secrets. And I'll keep your secret if you keep mine. And that is very true even today because everybody knows each other and we all know each other's business. And if you're a part of this community and we care about you, we're going to keep your secrets and you're going to keep our secrets. And so that's what's happened in this book. They've kept each other's secrets, but they've realized that in order for Bennett to reclaim his career, they've got to tell the secrets. And so they each one tell their story in a way that allows them to have, and I call it spin it. They spin their story and they share it so that the world will understand and forgive. So that's kind of their story, how they each tell their stories. In the second book, The Non-Negotiable, the love child that Ben and Poppy had, his name is Ben, and he is 22, and he falls in love with a genius Mensa level IQ girl that he meets in Napa, California. And they fall in love, and he ends up bringing her to Searcy, Arkansas. Now she has this whole goal of being running a Gold Star winery and being all about sustainability. And he wants to be and work in Napa. He wants to live in Searcy, Arkansas, and in Little Rock, Arkansas, and be a politician here. So how are they going to work that out? How do you love somebody and love their dream and honor their dream when it's not yours? How do you build a life that way? And it's all about compromise. And that's and all of these are set here, in Searcy. And the reason that it was so important for me to write the second book and tell that story was when my little 82-year-old mama read the first book, The Carrington Affairs, and it is about people that are getting divorced. I've told you that. My old mama said, "Well, could you have not written a book about people that stay married?" And I said, "I'll work on that, Mama." So in the second book, it's like, what does it take to stay married? Where do you learn that, even because love is what we need, but out of love comes compromise. And how do you find that compromise in a marriage or in relationships? So the non-negotiable is about compromise. And then the third book is called The Dirty Birds Book Club, and it's currently in at the editors. It's finished, and it wraps the story up, and it tells the story of Edna Stone, the matriarch in the society, the story of her secret five husbands, and she gets to tell her secrets. So it really is about how in small towns secrets are important, but also community is important and strong. The same idea you mentioned earlier, strong women that maybe are flawed, but find a way to be better and to help their community and help each other.
We'll talk about some of your biggest influences when it comes to writers, who influences you to do what you do.
Oh gosh, that's a good question too. I mentioned that I didn't really learn to read till I was, older because my mom was working with me. And the first book I really remember sticking with me and to this day still cuts me to the core is Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, when the character is gnawing on his hand because he's so hungry. And from there, I loved the classics, John Steinbeck, Faulkner, Hemingway. I was blessed to get to read all those books all the way through high school and college as an English major. And so I have a really strong background in that. And then as I got older and I just read for pleasure, I have read, everything from Daniel Steele to John Grisham to Sandra Brown to Jan Green to oh, Abby Genovese. You just keep going. Like I read all the time. J.J. Miller for legal thrillers. I love Jewel E. Ann, who writes romance. I like to read all of them, and I even like nonfiction. I read that as well, especially how to become that better person that I want to be, and I want my characters to be. And so I think all of those influence me, even if it's not a genre that I particularly love. I will enjoy reading it because even if I don't like what they do, then I know what I don't want in my writing. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
pretty much anything I read is in a sense um, influencing it. I didn't tell you earlier, you can find these books either at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere good books are sold, but definitely on Amazon they have them. And please, if you're interested in strong women, this is a good place to start. To look at those. I'm just now kind of getting into, I don't know if you like murder mysteries. I've never really been a big murder person. Um, and one of my friends locally, I found out he wrote books about murder and they're fantastic. So it's kind of changed my perspective. So really everything I read influences me.
All right. Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that listeners need to be aware of.
Okay. Well, I mentioned earlier that I have finished and sent to the editor the Dirty Birds Book Club. And in that book, they read five novels. Now, obviously, I'm not going to write a novel for each one of those, but I am working on a series of short stories that, that go with that. And they're based, all five of the short stories, you would read along with the other book so that you would know what the book club was reading. So the first one is called Tarnished, and they read the novel Tarnish, and then you could read the short story Tarnish. So the next one's called The Reckoning, and so you can read those. Will be going along with it, and because book clubs are a big part of my life. I'm in five, and I don't think there's for me. I absolutely love. I don't think there's anything I enjoy more than sitting around and discussing with other whip smart young women and men and of all ages, really, about literature. Because good writing never has a sell by date. It just doesn't. And when you get someone that can be from totally different backgrounds, totally for different beliefs, maybe not even like each other, but you read something and you start talking about it and you find a connection through time and space to connect with that human condition, then suddenly you now find someone that you can share a connection with, and it will begin to change your perspective of that person. And in doing so, because remember I mentioned about earlier about reality and perception, the way we interpret literature is so based on our story, our own stories. And because we filter it through that. So when we sit and talk about it, whether we realize it or not, we begin to share our own stories. And really that is when the connection happens. So that's partly why book clubs are so important for me. I see it almost as free therapy for people. And we have a joking thing, but what happens at book club stays at book club, because sometimes if you're reading something, you may share something you don't want shared outside that room. And so there again, there's that currency of secrets I think women have a lot of as well.
Well, so people can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your contact info.
It's true. Okay. I am Susan Gooch, the author on Instagram, and I do at least twice a month, sometimes more, a little spiel that's called Y'all Have to Read This. And I throw out really good books that I think are at least 4 or 5 star books that I've been reading. I'm on Facebook. I have susangooch.com, which you can also order books from me there. Um, and I am on Goodreads. I review books there as well. And on Amazon, have them on there as my reader page and my author page. So those are all good places to find me. SusangOooch.com. I don't know why that's so hard to say.
We'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Um, I think what I would say to a listener is, I, some people say to me sometimes, I'm just not a reader. I don't like to read, or I don't have time to read. And I truly think that everybody, in some way or another, is a reader. You may be a reader that listens to books. You may be a reader who only reads workbooks, like work, material for your job. You may only read nonfiction. You may only read religious things, but you're a reader. I want people to know that reading is not just novels. Yes, I write novels, but I want people to just read, because when research tells us when we read, we grow our brains, and we grow our brains, we're growing ourselves as people. And if you feel like that you aren't a good reader, it's probably because you haven't found your book yet. You haven't found your genre yet. And but even more important, keep looking for that. But if you have children, please don't ever say, well, he doesn't like to read or she doesn't like to read because I don't like to read, because you give them permission to not have to do that. And that'd be like saying you don't have to eat healthy, you don't have to exercise, you don't have to drink water, you don't have to take your medicine. You would never tell your child that. Well, reading to me really grows your brain, and it opens the door to education to so many people that wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. And I just think that's so important. And so as an educator for me, that's a big thing, is to get parents to understand that um, don't make reading, and I always hated it when I would have colleagues that would like assign reading homework, and then the kids were like, "Oh, I've got to read." I hate it when reading is seen that way. I would rather reading be something of joy. And so, if I had a student that really, and if you're a listener out there and you're going, yeah, she's talking to me. My kid hates reading. Like they hate it. And I hated it and I don't want to do it. And he doesn't want to do it or she doesn't want to do it. And I don't want to make them. I only get a few hours with them. I don't want to do that. So one of the best pieces of advice I feel like I could have given to those people, and I still do it today. You need to read something. You need to change the attitude around reading. I don't care if you buy a joke book for each other and you read each other a joke a day and make each other laugh and enjoy it and build some positive feelings around reading. Read one joke a day because then you read something that you didn't hate reading. Or if they only like a certain sport, maybe they only like to go rollerblading or playing video games or whatever it is they like, and they only want to, get something to read about that. And just read a little bit. If it's a paragraph, if it's two paragraphs, whatever you can do that's enjoyable, and then talk about it. But if they begin to associate reading with pleasure and enjoyment and time building relationships, it will change the world for them. And I really believe that as a literacy teacher. So that would be a piece of advice to any reader or listeners you have out there, that don't communicate the negative feelings. Find a way to communicate the positive feelings that reading can bring.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, SusanGooch.com. Like she said, get out there and read something, no matter how big or small it is. Just read, pick up her books, follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Susan really has a passion when it comes to reading and writing. And if you could read my newsletter, if you haven't signed up, go to www.curveball337.com. Read that short newsletter that comes out every week and share that with somebody, and share the website and the show to everybody you know. Leave us a review or any suggestions that you might have for the show. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Susan, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to reading your newsletter.
For more information on the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, visit www.curveball337.com. Until next time, keep living the dream.